Hello and welcome. Today's video is part 3 of my pony tractor restoration. So, let's start by replacing the bearing on that drive shaft and the O-rings on the transmission. Few things I'd like to talk about while that thing is cooling down about what I did for this. So first thing, when I took it out, as you probably saw, and in the last video too, I marked it where it was. That is because I want to put it back exactly where it was. Another thing that is probably a good idea, when you take something out like this, count how many turns you take out, because otherwise it's all fine and dandy that you have a mark on it, but if you don't know how many turns you did, what's the point? Luckily I managed without counting the turns on the first one. It was fine, and I counted the turns on this one so I know how many to put it back at. So yes, and hammering it out with just this rod worked well. I prefer to use a piece of rebar than a screwdriver because it's got a softer end, so it's less likely to break something. For taking out the old O-ring, if you have a plastic one, then I guess, yeah, you can just rip it out. But this is a metal housing. This is the old O-ring right here. And I'll show you the other side that I cleaned up. So the old O-ring had a metal housing like this, and that was a bit tricky to get out. Heating it up really made a difference. Without heating it up, I was hammering on it, and nothing happened, so I took it to a friend who knows a bit more about mechanics than I do, and he was hammering on it and trying to get it out, so he finally just heated it up and it came right out. So this one, I heated it right up, probably 2-3 minutes with the blowtorch, nice and even, going around in a circle, because I imagine this is a cast iron part, so you want to be a little careful with heating cast iron apparently. So I heated it even, and then as you saw, I hammered on it and it came right out. So heating it is definitely a game changer. Now to put the new O-rings on, there's this one on the back. I did buy a new O-ring for this and the other one because I figured although this O-ring is still good for the $2 or whatever it was for a new one, I might as well replace it while I'm here. And yes, this does feel a bit drier than the other one. So here is the new O-ring. I don't know if you can see. I don't know if this will focus. But anyway, I'll just read it out. It's a 28.57, 47.62, 9.52. The 28 is the interior, the 47.62 is the exterior, and the 9.52 is the thickness. And it's actually a 29 shaft, but the 28.57 interior diameter is perfect for it. And from what I've read, from my research on the internet, you always put the side with the spring on it. You can probably see there's a little spring in there towards the oil. So I'm putting it like this up inside. You'll see me do that in a minute, because this side will then be on the oil in the transmission, and this side will be to the outside. Now this actually is 0.2 millimeters bigger than the housing, but I managed to get the last one to fit, and it's nice and tight. All I'm using is a 32 millimeter socket. It's a little too small, and you'll see me do this in a minute. I'm just putting it in the vise and putting it together. So once this cools down, that's what I'm going to do. And you always want to make sure that you lubricate this kind of stuff when you're putting it together, apparently, including the inside. So I'm just using a bit of synthetic grease because I didn't have any transmission oil on hand that wasn't in a big jug. So grease is fine, or any oil, just something to lubricate it while you're putting it together. So I'm going to let that cool down, and then I'm going to put this all back together. Final drives back on. So I'm filling up the transmission. I'm going to do a mix of 80W90 and 85W140. Why? Because 85W140 is all I have, and I don't have enough of 80W90. I'm assuming that's okay based on what I've seen online. Doesn't matter if you mix oils like this, and though it doesn't say it in the manual, I'm just assuming that 85W140 will be okay in this gearbox. But I don't actually know. If you know, let me know in the comments. So the issue with this generator is this grounding bolt does not, it broke free, so there was no way I was going to ever tighten it. We can see here that it's just because that wire broke off. This was really easy to open. I just took the two nuts off of these, took this out, and now I'm going to go ahead and solder that back together somehow. And put a new bolt, obviously, because that one's stripped out. So if you remember in the last video, I was talking about how this clutch sometimes hangs up. And I was poking around under there, up in the bell housing there the other day, and the throwout bearing is rather burnt and rusted looking, and it has this horrible kind of ringing sound to it and a ton of slop. So the engine has to come out so that I can get to the throwout bearing, and while I'm at it I'll probably see if the rear engine seal needs to be replaced, although if it doesn't need to be replaced I probably won't bother. But that engine needs to come out, so that's what I'm doing now. So this is that rear engine seal. It is the plastic here is very hard. Interestingly, this seems to have a metal face, and maybe even It's interesting how this has got a metal face, but the inside is plastic, because all the other O-rings I've pulled off this tractor are like this, where it's metal on both sides and it's got a leather gasket in the middle, and the spring is in here and holds the leather on. Um, so I don't think this is an original engine seal. Anyway, I'm now going to take this regulator apart because I was reading in the manual. It says that it's probably a good idea to change the grease that's in here every 1,000 hours. Now the grease in here might very well have been changed within the last 1,000 hours of running time on the tractor, but it probably hasn't been changed in 40 or 50 years. So I think it would be a good idea to just take this apart, change it, and see if there's any bearings inside that need to be replaced. Because there's 2 bearings in here. I tried looking online to see, like looking on YouTube and stuff, to see if there was any information on how to take this apart. As with all the other parts on this tractor, I didn't really find anything, so it looks pretty simple. It looks like you just take out these 2 screws and the cover comes off. So I'm just going to take it apart and see what's inside here. And it will go back together fine. It doesn't look that complicated in there. So that's what I'm going to do. So there's supposed to be 50 to 75 grams of grease in here. There's definitely not that much grease. Anyway, this bearing needs to be replaced. And I think the bearing in here needs to be replaced too. And this all needs to be clean. It is all sticky and gooey, and yeah, it just needs to be cleaned and re-greased. So there was a retaining clip holding this bearing in. So unfortunately the housing got a little broken. But I'm hoping it will be alright. But yeah, if you take one of these apart, make sure you take that clip out because it's holding the bearing in. Never ever pound on the end of shafts like I was doing here. It rounds them over so you'll never get bearings off and onto them again. So thank you for watching. I've got my shopping list of parts I need here. So I'm gonna get those. They'll probably be in a few days. And presumably I have brake pads coming in the next day or two. So I'll be doing that. But I think this video is long enough. So I'm gonna leave it here, and in the next video I will be putting everything back together. And maybe we'll even get to take the tractor out for a test drive. So that'll be the next video, and if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and comment, tell me what you think. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.